Hello everybody, this is Dan Miller for Bluegrass Unlimited magazine, and we're back to some more lessons. We've been doing mandolin stuff for a little while, and then we had a series by Austin Scelzo on how to hear chord changes, and we had 4 videos there. There was a 5th one to finish out the set, but unfortunately there was some copyright protected material on the 5th segment of that, and so YouTube did not let us load it and run it. So sorry you missed that, but it just went on with the same kind of practice that he had been doing. But hopefully you watched that and you started to gain a feel for how to hear chord changes. Okay, we've gone through some ear training stuff before, but I just wanted to do one more little thing here that I thought would help you out if you're trying to learn by ear. Now I know a lot of people get frustrated trying to learn music by ear because it's just, if you watch somebody on YouTube or you get a tablature, that seems to be easier, and usually it is. However, if you try to learn things by ear, either learning how to whistle it or hum it yourself and then finding it on your instrument, or maybe transcribing, maybe slowing somebody else's solo down and trying to find the notes on your instrument, that's really valuable. Even though at first it's frustrating and it takes a while, it seems to take longer and too long sometimes. But if you spend the time and the effort doing it up front, then I think in the long run you'll be happy that you spent that effort, and you will feel like it's time well spent. Okay, I started my musical life learning banjo from tablature, and I had a hard time breaking away from it. And once I did, and once I really spent the time getting away from it, I was glad that I spent that time. All that to say, take some time and learn things by ear. We've talked about this before in previous videos about how to find chords, how to find key, how to just start working with simple nursery rhymes and try to find those on your instrument. That's a really good exercise. But today what I want to talk to you about is intervals. Really, being on a note and being able to find the next note is all about learning how to hear that interval and find it on your instrument. This is called relative pitch, when you have one pitch and you're trying to find the next one, which is opposed to perfect pitch. Perfect pitch is where you don't need any reference. Somebody just plays a note and you hear it and you know what it is. Perfect pitch is difficult. Relative pitch is a bit easier because you have that note already and you just got to hear in your mind and find on your instrument the next note from the one you already have. And that's called relative pitch. Relative because you already have a pitch and you're finding the next note relative to it. That's a little bit easier to do, and if you work on that and try to hear those intervals and find those intervals and get really familiar enough that you have an instinctual feel of where to find the next note from the one that you're playing or one you've heard right in the moment to find the next note, is a really valuable skill. And all the people I've ever talked to about learning music, they highly recommend you learn by ear. So what I want to talk to you right now about is intervals. How to find those intervals, how to get familiar with those intervals, how to gain those intervals so they do become instinctual. Like anything else, you got to start out from the very basics. And a lot of times if you go to college and you learn ear training and music theory, they're going to give you the do, re, mi, fa, sol exercises. And to me, those are fine. Sometimes I like to, instead of do, re, mi, fa, I like to go 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, because that makes more sense to me in my brain than trying to go, oh, if a do is 1, then what's a so? And remember that I just know 1, 5. You know, to me the numbers make more sense. But if the do, re, mi, solfege sounds make more sense to you, that's fine. But what I'm going to give you is something that doesn't really so much rely on either of those. To some degree it does, but again, I'm going to use the numbers. It's about those intervals in your head already. And what I mean by that is if you learn, and it's not hard to memorize, what songs you already know that start out with that interval, then you already have that interval in your head. You just sing that song in your head and you have that interval and can become familiar with that interval. And if you think about intervals when you're learning songs and when you're learning how to play simple songs by ear, if you will become aware and focus on those intervals and hear what those intervals sound like and register that in your head, it's going to be easier in the long run. I always think whether you want to improve your tone, whether you want to improve your timing, whether you want to improve any of these fundamental things, what it really takes is just a focus and an awareness of it. If you want to have good tone, be aware of your tone. If you want to have good timing, be aware of your timing. Focus on that. Think about it. Practice it. Get in the nitty-gritty of it, and then it'll improve. The same thing with hearing these intervals. You got to get into the nitty-gritty of it, and I think what I'm going to give you here today will help you along those lines. Okay, there's a lot of intervals we could talk about. You can go at the chromatic scale and you can come back down the chromatic scale. You could go up the major scale, come back down the major scale. What I'm going to talk about today is just reference to walking up the major scale. So we're going to go from 1 to the major second. We're going to skip over the minor second, which is a half step up from the 1. So we're just going to walk up the scale. I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the whole octave of the scale. Later we can talk about those other intervals that we're skipping over, and we can talk about descending intervals. But right now, today, we're just going to talk about going from 1 to 2, going from 1 to 3, going from 1 to 4, going from 1 to 5, going from 1 to 6, 1 to 7, 1 to 8. If you can familiarize yourself with those intervals, just starting on the root and going to those other intervals, that's going to be the first step in starting to build your skill with relative pitch. Okay? So I'm going to do in the key of G, so my 1 is going to be the G note. This G octave on the open G string of the guitar. Okay? Now if I just want to, the first interval to start with is the unison interval, which is just playing the same note. A lot of songs do that. They play the note and the second note of the song is the same note. An obvious one is Twinkle Little Star. We're going to say twinkle, twinkle. So it's just the same note repeated. Twinkle. Okay? So that's the first one to get familiar with. That's pretty easy. You're just playing the same note. The second one, we went from 1 to 1. Now we're going to go from 1 to 2 of the major scale. Now the song we can do that with is Will the Circle Be Unbroken? Just get accustomed to that. Will the, do, re, 1, 2, will the. Just get familiar with that, referencing the first 2 notes of the song of Will the Circle Be Unbroken. Okay? The next one to go to is the interval of the third. So if we go to G scale, 1, 2, 3, right, is the B note. G, A, B. So we want to go 1, 3. And that one is, Oh, When the Saints Go Marching In does that. Oh, when the saints, oh, when, 1, 3, 1, 3. So just get that feel in your head, that sound in your head. Oh, when, 1, 3, okay? And go back and forth and get that in your head. Start with Twinkle Little Star. Go to Will the Circle Be Unbroken. Then go to When the Saints Go Marching In. The next one we can go to is the interval of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the scale. And that can be Your Love Is Like a Flower. Oh, they tell. That's 1, 1, 1, 4, 6. Oh, they tell. And you just go through. You can go through that. You can go through the first several notes and say the numbers or the do, re, mi, whatever you want to do. But you can say, oh, they tell 1, 4, 6. Just go over and over that until that gets cemented in your head, and then now you've got 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. Now we can go to 1, 5, and 1, 5, we can go back to Twinkle Little Star, because you go twinkle, twinkle, 1, 1, 5, 5, twinkle, twinkle. Just get used to that interval, going from 1 to 5. And it's not hard to remember these songs. Again, we got Twinkle Little Star is the unison, and then we've got Will the Circle Be Unbroken for the 2. We've got When the Saints Go Marching In for the 3. We've got Your Love Is Like a Flower for the 4. And then back to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. First 2 notes are the unison, and then the next note's going to go up to the 5. Now for the 6, we got that song, My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, right? My Bonnie lies over the ocean. So think of that in your head when you want to go from an interval from a 1 to a 6. 1, 6, 1, 6, my Bonnie. Okay? So again, you can just take each of these songs, and you don't just have to stick with the first 2-note interval, or in the case of Twinkle Little Star, you can do, you're going to do the unison and then jump up to the 5th, and it goes twinkle, twinkle, so it goes 1, 1, 5, 5, singing that back and forth. You can keep going farther in the songs, and again, name the interval. Name the interval relative to the 1, so that you can just and say the number. And again, it's just going to get this idea in your head of relating things to those intervals, and the more you do it, the more you'll be able to hear those intervals, and you won't have to think of the numbers or the do, re, mi syllables, or the song that starts with that. It'll just start to build where you get those things in your head, and change the key. Do the same thing in other keys, and just get familiar with all that. Okay, going from 1 to 7 is a difficult interval to sing. There's not a lot of vocal songs I can think of that goes from the 1 to the 7. But, you know, I'll date myself here. If you remember that show Fantasy Island, the theme song went da 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 da. That goes 1, 7, 8, 6. Da da. That's it. 1, 7, da da. Okay. So that goes. Usually, you just really won't have to worry about that. That is an interval that you don't see too often. It does show up, as do all these others. But your more common ones are the ones that go from, probably the most common are the 1, 3, the 1, 5, the 1, 6 thing, well, the 1, 2, the stuff that's relative to your major pentatonic scale, really, but 1, 7 doesn't show up that much. The octave, again, the higher you get, the broader interval you get, the harder these things are to sing. Any song that you're finding hard to sing, when you get to that hard to sing part, it's usually because it's a big interval leap, okay? Now going from 1 to 8, Over the Rainbow, somewhere, it's hard, yeah, see, it's hard to sing. Somewhere, I can't, it's hard for me to get up that high. My range isn't terribly broad. So, somewhere, somewhere, that is a full interval. That's 1 to 8, okay? There's other songs that have that interval. Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and some songs have that within the song, but it's not as common that you'll find. I would work on 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 6. That's the ones you'll see most common, And the 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5 are even more common. When you start to get that big interval, it's harder to sing, so people shy away from that unless they're really great singers. But you know, you'll see it. So that's what I'd like you to do, is take those songs and get accustomed to those intervals. And again, sing the words, play the notes, sing the numbers. You could sing the do, re, mi syllables, whatever you want to sing, and just start familiarizing yourself with those intervals. And you can do this just driving down the road. You don't have to have the instrument in your hand. Just sing those intervals and say, okay, this is 1 to 2, this is 1 to 3, this is 1 to 4, this is 1 to 5, this is 1 to 6, and sing those songs. And just get accustomed to hearing those intervals in your head. And when you go through this exercise, and just every time you pick up your instrument, try it, and you'll find that you'll start to hear the intervals easier and easier. And you don't always have to go from the 1, you can go from the 2 to the 4, the 2 to the 6, you know, whatever you want to go to. The intervals are going to be there the same way relative to the note you start with. So work with those, and I think if you pay attention and focus on that, I think your ear training will come a long way. All right, this is Dan Miller for Bluegrass Unlimited Magazine. We'll see you next time.